people these days are asking how they can get rich with chia. Now, I've gotten started on chia here. You can see I've got some chia seeds here. I bought them at Costco a while back. Didn't eat all of them, so I'm growing some of them here. And I figure if I increase this by about 1,000,000 times, I might break even. But that's not the kind of chia we're talking about. We're talking about the cryptocurrency invented by BitTorrent founder Bram Cohen about 5 years ago, give or take. Went live about 2.5 years ago. And it's a revolutionary proof of space and time cryptocurrency, unlike proof of work that you probably heard about from GPU and CPU and ASIC mining. Now, in about 1 minute and 5 seconds, I'm going to tell you how to get rich quick with chia. But first, I'm going to give you the advice that I've given to hundreds or thousands of miners, farmers, prospective chia people, and I didn't come up with it. It came from Bram Cohen himself early on in the plotting stages of early chia, and that's start with what you have. You don't need to spend hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to get started in chia or to earn a fair amount of chia. Now, obviously, the more space you have, the more you earn, but understand what you're doing, figure out the technology, figure out the methods, and figure out what you want to do. If you're wanting to make this a short-term project, don't. If you want to look at the horizon rather than the hood ornament, you can probably do pretty well for yourself, and you can learn some interesting stuff along the way, as many people have. A lot of people have gotten into Linux or even Windows system administration, storage, networking, GPUs, power, and all of that stuff. But look 2 to 3 years into the future, because the way to get rich quick at chia, there is none. And you probably knew that going into this video, but you wanted to see if I was going to come up with something really interesting that nobody had ever thought of before. Sorry, there is no shortcut, and it is a long-term investment of time, if not a little bit of money. Now, one of the reasons that it's easier to look that far in advance or ahead for chia revenue is that chia uses proof of space and time, which means that the compute-intensive part of the process, the stuff that you do 24/7 for GPU, CPU, and ASIC mining, is done up front. You make plot files, 100 gigabyte files, more or less. It varies depending on your plot size and your compression. But you're building these files with cryptographic data, and you're going to farm them. Not really forever, but for a long, long time. They don't wear out generally unless you kill your hard drives, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well, very briefly. But you spend anywhere from 2 or 3 minutes to 22.1 hours making a plot. Generally, it's on the shorter frame there, but if you're using a Raspberry Pi 4 gig Model 4B, it's 22.1 hours to plot with a good external SSD. I wouldn't do that for too long, but I've done it. So you do that for a certain amount of time. You can keep doing it as long as you have long-term storage, which is generally hard drive storage. The larger the better, because while it is cheaper to farm with hard drives than to mine with GPUs, you're still using about 5 watts per drive, and 5 watts for 2 terabytes is a lot less efficient than 5 watts for 10 or 12 or pretty soon 22, 24 terabyte drives. So you're spreading out the cost of the process. You're taking a little bit of hit up front, but it's a one-time thing. You can plot a lot of space really fast if you plan it properly or borrow a friend's workstation or something. And then you just let it run. It'll keep finding coins, finding blocks, or you can pool and keep earning proportionally based on your contributions to the pool, whether you ever find a block or not. I've found maybe 12 blocks in 2 years, I think, with 200 terabytes on average, but I keep earning a little bit every time I submit work, or at least every time my pool finds a block. So you can keep that going, and what a lot of us in the chia world, both in the farming and in the outright coin buying realms, are expecting is that as chia becomes more useful in the real world, it's getting some good use cases in government and civic opportunities. But today it's a little bit hard to use still as a currency, but there are uses for the blockchain beyond the XCH coin. And as those grow, and as access to the currency grows, and as the larger hard drives come off lease and get refurbished and recertified, it's going to be a lot more useful. There's going to be people farming a lot more, and the value of chia should go up. This is not a guarantee. This is not investment advice. This is not soothsaying or future telling or fortune telling. I'm just saying that's what a lot of us, myself included, are working with the expectation of. Now, one of the good things about Chia processing that you don't get with a lot of the mining technology is that in 2 years, those hard drives will still be hard drives. People can still store data on them. You can store backups of your computers. If you collect Linux ISO files, you can store them on them in 2 years. And you're not wearing out the hard drives. That was a myth that got spread early on in 2021, I think it was. And even though Bram Cohen struck it down, a lot of storage experts struck it down, you're not going to kill a hard drive by reading from it a lot. It's almost like that's what they're meant for. Now, it is conceivable, and I've heard of 3 people so far, maybe 4, in 2.5 years of plotting, who have killed SSDs with the plotting process. And most of those were people using used SSDs that they had already been using for a couple of years. The one in my initial plotter, which was my Ryzen desktop system that I'd been using for 2 years, I had bought in 2019 the cheapest 2 terabyte NVMe drive I could find. And I had been using it as a primary drive in a desktop for a couple of years. I moved it off in favor of a faster desktop boot drive and used it as spare space for Dropbox and things like that for a year or 2. And then I started using it as my plotting temp space. And I probably, for various reasons, plotted at least 200 terabytes with that drive as my temp space, and it's still running in my home office as the backup and the cloud storage snapshot drive on my main desktop, which is still that Ryzen 3600 machine. So don't get panicked about killing your drives. I wouldn't plot to your OS drive, just because if it does fail, if you do kill it somehow, it's going to be a mess to clean up, although you should be able to reinstall from scratch anyway. But you don't have to worry about the equipment wearing out. Those servers will be outdated even more in 2 years, but there will still be people in the home lab community. There will be startups and people starting little businesses on the side and side hustles who will be interested in getting a deal on, say, my secondary plotter is a Dell T7910 with dual Xeon processors. And when I stopped plotting for a year, it became my workstation. Remote workstation, but I was doing various things on it. I could run virtualization on it. I could do various other home lab type things or practice for my work stuff where I didn't have a lab at work at the time. And, the machine is still worth some money if I wanted to sell it. So you're not really burning out the equipment. If you bought an ASIC miner 2 years ago, it's probably a doorstop now, unless you've got free power and really don't want to make anything off of it. Maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years, I don't know. But ASIC miners and GPUs get outdated a lot faster than hard drives for many aftermarket uses, and that's part of the circular economy that Chia makes a lot of noise about in terms of being green, beyond the logo and the farming and plotting analogy that they have as opposed to mining. So that's kind of a long way around saying that it's probably worth it in the long run if you have the equipment, or if you're willing to invest a little bit of money. You can put $100,000 into a Chia farm. Somebody will sell you this stuff, and you could probably learn a lot from that. But I wouldn't recommend it up front. Start with what you have. If it's a desktop computer, if it's a laptop, maybe buy a USB 3 SSD, 512 gig, a terabyte, or even a 2.5 inch drive that you add into your computer, or an NVMe drive that you add into your computer. And get to know the technology, get to know how plotting works, how compression works. I'll do some coverage of that on this channel in the near future. But figure it out with what you have and as little as you possibly can spend. Now, if you don't have a computer right now, it happens. I run into people who don't have a computer at home. They don't want a computer at home, but maybe some of you out there want to get into Chia. I'll link you to a blog post I did 2 years ago that explains some starting points at various price points. I have a Raspberry Pi 4B 8 gigabyte single board computer that's about $85 if you can find it in stock, and they are coming back into stock. Add less than $100 USB SSD. I like the Samsung T series. I've got a T5 on one of my test machines. And follow the videos that I'm going to post on this channel in the next month about how to get started, how to set up your wallet, how to sync the blockchain, how to plot, how to farm, how to pool, and how to start earning Chia. So until then, I'm Robert Novak with Ristus11.com and the Andromedary Instinct in the heart of Silicon Valley. Wishing you the best in farming and whatever you may choose to do.